This is the Infinity Summit Group. Truth, passion, success.
Okay, no, that's easy. So we'll start with the past. Past, I was a completely different person. My life wasn't the easiest, but it wasn't also the hardest. I moved out to Utah when I was 10. That was my first real decision of my life. So my aunt pretty much raised me. She was the first person to ever, she's actually the first person to hold me. And so I'm 10 years old, and my aunt comes to me, and she's like, do you want to move to Utah with me and your uncle? Or do you want to stay with your mom? And so it was my mom and my stepdad and my, at the time, 2 sisters. And looking back, I don't know how, the parents made this my choice, as well as I don't know how I so confidently said yes. But I think looking back, at that time, I knew my aunt was like my mom. And so I couldn't live without her, so I was like, yep, I'm moving there. And it was a rough upbringing. I caused a lot of problems for myself. A little bit fast forward, I went through being diagnosed with Bipolar 2. Was told that I was supposed to be on 4 different pills for the rest of my life. Luckily, my aunt raised me in a way that I admire so deeply. She allowed me to really find out life on my own. But she was tricky with it. She was tricky in the sense of she kind of molded the way I should go, but she made it in a fun way. For example, I learned psychology and ended up falling into the love of psychology because she took me to Barnes & Noble. And she said, hey, do you want to come with me? I was like, why would I want to go to a bookstore? She's like, you don't want to go to a bookstore? That's free knowledge. We just I'm going to buy you coffee. You can grab some books, and you can just learn. And I was introverted, so I found the psychology section. I'm like, what's this? And that's where I began to learn about psychology. So I knew this at the time of when I was diagnosed. I knew a lot about it. And so I said, I'm not taking pills. I'm not doing it. Cold turkeyed them because I was admitted. So I was forced to for 2 weeks. But then after that, cold turkeyed them. And I said, I'm spending the next 3 years in isolation. All I'm doing is going to work, coming home. Going to work and coming home. And after those 3 years, I went back to the doctor, did all the tests. He said, you have no signs. Your lithium levels are completely normalized. In fact, your dopamine levels are 2 to 3 times higher than the average person. What have you been doing? And so that's the point that I'm 2 years now from that experience. And now I'm just so laser focused on the future. I spent the 2 years just enjoying life because I never thought I could. And now I have so many goals I can't keep track of it. It was funny. You asked me, you said, do you want me to just text you when the time comes? And I was like, no, if that happens, I am going to forget and be booked out. And I was like, I need to know now. And so I could put this in the calendar so that I have no way of overriding that. And it's enjoyable. So that's a little bit of that. And the goal for the future is to prove not only myself wrong in all the doubts, but also to see what I can do, honestly. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, well said.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well said.
So
Just
now-
keep it rolling.
All right. Yeah,
That was a
perfect.
great intro. We'll just open up with that.
I loved it.
Heck yeah.
So, starting back when you were 10 years old,
Yep.
where were you born number one,
Mm-hmm.
and up to the year of 10 years, up to like the age of 10 years old, what was your life like?
So this is interesting because a lot of this life, from 10 and down, honestly from 13 or 14 on down, it's just bits and pieces. And a lot of the knowledge that I have about my past, I had to gain from my aunt. And I'm also learning a lot of these things now because I'm at a point in my life where she's like, okay, now you can handle this. So I have very small pieces, and luckily a lot of them are good. But from when I was born in Hawaii, born and raised on the Big Island. And I love bringing this up, and I'm glad you asked this because a lot of people have a misconception of Hawaii. Now, when a lot of people think about Hawaii, they think tropical paradise, the best place to live on earth, perfect weather, amazing. But what they don't think is, okay, so you think about Maui and Oahu. These are all touristy places. The Big Island is just a very local place. And Hawaiians, we are a war or we're a fighting type of tribe. Back in the day, that's what our culture was. We were warriors. And so a lot of this mentality has stayed, but the problem is in the modern era, you're stuck on an island that you can drive around within a day. So you end up going to the same places. You know all the same people. You used to call this small lake city, right? But Hawaii is the purest small island place because you know every single person. You know all of their family. It's a place where you can hear a last name and you know all about them. And so this breeds a lot of chaos because you're bored. You have all these abilities to know everybody's life, and you end up falling in drugs or a gang. There's a very big problem with drunk driving, and they're very hostile. And I hate to say this about Hawaii, but it's a very small-minded place without very big ambitions, because we have a trap of we want to live off the island. We want to live a simplistic life, but in the modern day, that's almost impossible.
It's like Moana. They're like, you have everything you need here. Why do you need anything else?
Yep. But then you have the influence of social media, and you see all the rest of the world and what they're doing. So it's like a catch-22. But for my life growing up, me and my mother have a very interesting relationship. From what my aunts told me, she pretty much deemed me as a demon child. She was like, I didn't want you. She actually tried to give. There was an Asian couple in one of the stores out there while we were shopping, and they said how cute I was, and she was like, "Oh well, if you want to adopt him, you can." One of the moments my aunt said that she realized like she really had to step up and be there for me was when I had a soda that I grabbed out of the fridge, and I was like, "I want to drink this," so I go over to my mom, and I'm like, "Hey, Dinky, Dinky." And she's ignoring me. She grabs the soda finally and throws it on the ground. So that's the kind of life I had with my mother. My stepdad he was a harder person, but he taught me a lot about life. He was very much more on the side of old school discipline. And that did teach me a lot. But it was insane to see, or thinking about this looking back, because my aunt took me on when she was 16.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so from 1 to 10, this is a good example. So 4 is a memory I have, right? Being at 4. I moved out, I believe I was that age, but I moved to West Virginia. This was my first interaction with racism. But I didn't know this was racism at the time. So my mom's moving out there because a family friend offered to pay for her medical school and give her housing and everything. Well, he had a son. He was around 10, I believe, at this time. For whatever reason, he didn't like me. And he would kick me down the stairs. So I remember getting kicked down the stairs and falling. I remember very vividly him grabbing my head and putting it in between a door and smashing it.
Jeez. At 4 years old.
At 4 years old.
And how old was he?
10.
Okay.
And I always thought that this was like a image I had conjured up in my mind till one day I asked my aunt about it, and she was like, "Oh yeah, no, that was so-and-so. He was probably racist. And he just didn't like you, and that's why you moved back to Hawaii." And so that was that for that time. And then when I went from 10 to 16, this is a very pivotal moment because it was when I came out here. And I really do look at Salt Lake as my home. But I don't know whether it was the fact of having this family circumstance or being in a new place. And we did go house to house, so years on years, everything was kind of changing. But I was in and out of court 26 times from 10 to 16.
That's crazy.
In and out of court for breaking and entering, GTA, fighting, property destruction, stealing, anything you could think of. I probably did it besides hardcore drugs or anything like that. I got involved in a gang because I thought that was the cool thing. I literally remember at one point saying, when somebody asked me, what are you going to do with your life? I literally remember saying, I don't care. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And I was not only in and out of court 26 times from 10 to 16, I was expelled from every single school. And at the time, I thought I like to blame it on my aunt and uncle because we kept moving around. Now the adult me goes, oh, we kept moving around because I got expelled. So it was a very brutal it was self-created problems. I was lost in life, destructive, and I remember the pivotal moment. There was 3 pivotal moments that completely changed me. I got a family counselor directed towards me, and I forget his last name, but Cameron, he's an amazing man. He was the first person in my life that showed me trust without having the any responsibility to, or like family, you expect them to. A best friend, you expect them to. This person had no reason. And so the setup was, he would teach me how to deal with things, like he taught me this one thing, SOTA. This is how you deal with all your problems. You remember the acronym SOTA: situations, options, disadvantages, and advantages. And I use that every day to this day. And if I did good and didn't get in trouble, by the end of the month, I would get a reward, whether that meant going out and getting some food that I really wanted, or getting a skateboard or something like that.
And this was a reward that you gave yourself or Cameron gave you?
So we would agree on a certain reward, and he would give it to me, but whatever the reward was, there was a reasonable expectation that I had to bring.
And what age was this turning point around?
This was around 15 to 16.
15, 16.
Yeah. And so come towards the end, when I'm turning 16, I was very much into martial arts. I loved Taekwondo, and I had an obsession with knives. And so I said, for my big goal, I want a knife. Mm-hmm. Now he says, I can't do that because I could risk my job.
Fair enough.
And he thinks it over, comes back, and he says, you know what? I believe in you enough. If you can do this, 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 and this, I'll get you that knife. We'll walk into Asian Mart. We'll get you what you want, and that's it.
And what were those few stipulations?
It was genuinely trying to better myself in the sense of behaving, and that sounds weird to a lot of people, but behaving in the sense of controlling your emotions, how you react to people, putting into the practice of all the lessons that he's taught me, and really giving my all to my future. And so he just I think for him it was, he wanted to see me really step into that role instead of practicing it. And so I guess whatever I had done had proven that to him, and he bought me this knife. And I'm just a very introspective person where I like to think about things. And to me, it was like, it wasn't, I got what I wanted, right? It was, wait, he said he could lose his job for this. Then he ended up getting it. He knows my history. He knows I have a history of violence. Why would he trust me like this? And that blew my mind. That to this day is something I cannot fathom. I can't understand it. My brain will not wrap around it. But it showed me that I do deserve trust. And it not only showed me that, but it showed me if he's giving me this trust, then I really have to act the part that deserves that trust. And that changed the course. The second thing was slightly before this. My aunt has always been my rock. My aunt, even through all the arguments and headaches and problems I've caused her, this is the last time I went to court, and she drops me off at the track station, and she says, I'm done. I'm over it. Find your own way home. And I remember getting on tracks, and I get stopped by a cop, and I'm like, I just got out of court. I don't have a ticket, and he sees the papers there. I just get home safe. And I remember getting there, and then I caused an argument that night, and then I ended up getting escorted out of the house, and I was forced to live with a family friend. And so seeing that amount of effort lost in my aunt, seeing that somebody that genuinely, no matter what, has always believed in you, seeing that moment of they no longer care, that was so shocking to me. she was somebody that I could always rely on, even no matter how much headache I caused her. And so that made me think, oh, I need to figure my life out. The third final thing was the passing of one of my very close friends. So I don't know if you guys have lived in the area long enough, but in Daybreak there was a shooting. Double, I don't know what you call it, but 2 kids were killed in a house.
Double homicide.
Double homicide, yeah. Mm-hmm. And the story was that one kid, they were playing with a gun, and one kid shot the other, and then that kid took his life. That kid was my best friend, Dayton. Now, the reason why I say this was such a big pivotal moment in my life was we split off because we were very troubled, right? And the courts decided to split us up, have me go to a different school, so on and so forth, because we caused trouble all the time together. And then one day when I moved back in with my aunt, and he messages me, he's like, hey, it's been so long. He's like, let's hang out. And I'm excited. I'm like, oh, hey, yeah. He says, hey, come over. We're having a party. And for some reason, something just tells me, no, don't go. So I say, I can't. I'm actually, I'm still grounded, so I have to stay home.
Perfect excuse.
And my therapy at the time was running. So I went out and I ran. And I remember, and I was running around Daybreak, and I remember hearing the gunshot. But it didn't connect. And then as I'm running back home, my other close friend, Jackie, she calls me and she's like, are you in Daybreak right now? And I'm like, yeah, I'm actually running home. And then she tells me the news and I just drop because everything connects. I told him, let me backtrack. I actually ended up telling him I was grounded. And then I later on told him the real reason because the night of, he tried to convince me. And I said, no, to be honest, I see you're still doing things that I don't agree with. I'm really trying to better my life. And it's weird because to this day, I still have those messages, and I'll look back and at times when I reminisce, and I'll see that, and I'll read over it. But I remember saying, I'm choosing not to do this anymore.
Wow.
And then hearing about that story, it was a moment where you got to see the outcome of 2 different things. Like you get to see the 2 different paths you could have taken, and you got on the lucky chance of seeing what would have happened if you went down the wrong one. So those 3 things combined jarred me and made me think, no, life is kind of serious. You kind of got to take it very seriously and not mess around with it.
Oh, yeah.
So
Either nothing matters or
amazing.
everything matters.
yeah. So that was that point in my life. That was what led up to the pivotal moment. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot to unpack there, really. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So, back to your bipolar disorder
Yeah.
before we kind of dive into that stuff. When you first went into the doctor and got diagnosed with that, what was your feelings? What were your thoughts?
Yeah.
What was kind of that experience like?
So this was an interesting moment because for a while I actually was telling my aunt from about 16 to 18, I would tell my aunt periodically I want to see a therapist. At the time, my aunt didn't believe in that. She's like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just your attitude. And I just kind of shrugged it off as that, even though I knew that I needed to see a therapist. Then one day, we're arguing like we normally do, and my go-to strategy, because I had very big anger management problems, my thought process was, I love this argument because it's a feeling, it's like it's an adrenaline rush, and I just, in my mind, it was like, now they know how mad I am. And it was stupid, but that was my normal go-to thoughts. But this time we're arguing and something, it's like those movies where you see that something snaps in them and they become a whole different person. I got to feel that at that moment, and I snapped. And something in my brain just didn't care anymore. I stopped arguing instantly, said okay, and I walked straight to my room, wrote down my little note, and then I attempted, got admitted. And the crazy thing is my aunt was the one, she knew because of how she had the same thoughts. Normally he argues and argues and argues till we blow up and things dissipate. So she knew something was wrong. She comes up, opens the door, and I come to seeing her smacking me and freaking out. And then this is the first time I ever saw my aunt extremely angry. She punches the closet door and breaks it, puts a hole in it, gets super pissed. The ambulance ends up coming. I get admitted, and there's this clip of Cat Williams where he's talking about being admitted in a mental ward, and he's like, my cup runneth over, Lord. He's like, I'm sorry. And he says something that is so true. He said, now, beforehand, I would have thought I was crazy. But when I got in there, I realized I was sane. And it's very true. I got in there, and I realized just seeing these people that had actual problems, I was like, life is not that bad. Like, these are people that are genuinely distraught in their mind. They're battling things bigger than me. And also having that freedom taken away where I had a roommate. This man, it was a movie scene, literally something out of the movie, and not like a highlight reel. So I'm nosy. So I opened up his notebook one day, and it's like the movies where you look at a paper and they're talking to themselves.
Oh dear.
Like, you have to be careful. Don't know. And like pages and pages of this. And my mind, this is another moment where my mind just can't wrap. You hear about these things and you know these things exist, but when you see it, you're like,
What the fuck?
yeah. And it was brutal. It was brutal being forced to take these pills. And the psychiatrist said something to me. She diagnosed me after 15 seconds of talking. And she said, these are the reasons why. Because you're all over the place with your thoughts and what you're trying to get across. You are rapidly talking. You have very a fast way of delivering your sentences. And in my mind, I'm furious because I'm thinking for the last years, for 3 years or 4 years, I've been asking to get to a therapist, and now I'm in front of a psychiatrist, and I respect psychology. I'm doing this because you're the first person I have to vent to. Mm-hmm. You're the first person I have that has the knowledge that I lack and everyone else around me lacks. You're the person that I am trusting to help me. And you've taken 15 seconds to diagnose me as bipolar. And she didn't even diagnose me correctly. She said, you are manic bipolar. And so I immediately did everything I had. Whatever they wanted me to do, I did. It got to the point where every morning they would have to stick a needle in my arm so that they could draw the blood to see the lithium levels. It got to the point where I was laying there with a sheet over my head and I'd just stick my arm out. They'd put it in, I'd go back to sleep.
Oh.
I got out of there, and that was when I just tried to do everything. So at the time, too, I had gotten in a relationship with this girl. And 3 months we're dating. She was the love of my life. She was the person that I was like happiest with. I was goofy. I did things out of my character that felt like the realest me. I played so many, like, don't get me wrong, she did a lot of things wrong too, but I played, in my beliefs, bigger parts that destroyed us. And one of these things was we ended up expecting. And I was so irrational at the moment and had such lack of control of my emotions that I didn't talk things through appropriately, or it was all about me. But I presented it in it's all about you. And she ended up disappearing for a week. Then I finally get a FaceTime through, and she's drinking, and I'm like, why are you drinking with my kid? She goes, there's no kid. End up finding out she got an abortion. So at the same time, too, I get kicked out. A little bit before this, I got kicked out of my house for an argument. We were living together at this point after the whole abortion because I took her back, wanted to work things out. We decided to get a place together. And then she moves out. All this happens, and I end up moving up to Park City. When I got to Park City was when I spent 3 years. And I self-admitted because I wanted to make sure I'm doing good, but I was getting depressed. And this psychiatrist changed the game for me. He talks to me and he goes, I looked over your file. You were classified as manic bipolar. I want to talk to you real quick. First off, manic bipolar is an old term that we used to use when we didn't understand what bipolar was. We don't really understand how bipolar happens or why it happens. What our best guess is it's a traumatic event. And so I want to break something down to you. There is 2 different classes of bipolar. There's bipolar 1 and there's bipolar 2. Bipolar 1 is where you hear voices, or like for example, you remember, if anybody's watched 90210, there's a girl on there that like she's bipolar, and she hears, like, for example, if we're sitting here, all of a sudden if I look this way, you'd be like, oh, he's stupid. And then I think you said that. And then I start an argument with you. That's bipolar 1. It's a lot more all over the place. Bipolar 2 is when you have extreme depression and extreme manic highs. So there's a dangerous cycle with it. So you're depressed. You end up, if it was like me, I had a bad habit, my manic showed in my spending. So I'd spend thousands of dollars. I remember in one day I spent $6,000 like it was nothing. Not even a day, in like an hour and a half of searching shit.
Tell me it was on assets. No, I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
no, it was on music equipment that I thought I was going to pursue. I ended up pursuing it, but at the time that was a whole waste and it did absolutely nothing for me.
And that was on a manic high or low?
On a manic high. So what happens is you're depressed, and for me, you end up spending money to make you feel better.
Retail therapy, baby.
Yep. Then what happens is you feel better. Then you realize you're broke. And you realize you don't have this thing to give you a dopamine rush. Then you're back to being depressed. And the tricky cycle, too, is while you're manic high, the reason why they call it a manic high is because you feel like a god. You feel like anything you set your mind to, you can accomplish. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. In fact, it's so much so true that I have a nonprofit, AOA Movement, which stands for Always Overcome Adversity. I started that in a manic high. And I had no clue about nonprofits. I had no clue about even how to start a business. I didn't even know that you had to buy a license and all these things to actually even own a business before you own it. In a time span of a week, I learned everything I had to learn. And then the next 2 days after, did everything I had to do to get the licensing and everything and started up. 3 days later, I'm in Granite School Districts. That's how a manic high is. And
bizarre.
so the psychiatrist explains this to me. He's like, that's what you are. You have extreme depressions where and there's always two ways of that, how they emulate. So this is a great example for anybody out there who wants to know if you have a friend or a lover or a family member that is suffering with this and you might not know. Here's some great ways to tell. They either never sleep or they oversleep. 2 reasons why. If they never sleep, they're constantly thinking things over and stressing themselves out. If they oversleep, like I did, they are oversleeping so that they never have to think. Another way too, weird, but showers. A lot of people that are depressed will spend a copious amount of times in a shower. The reason why is because the warmth from a shower emulates psychologically the warmth of a body and somebody hugging you. So you'll use that unknowingly as a coping mechanism to feel warm. Those are 2 great ways. Those are almost one of the best indicators, because if you're good, you don't oversleep. If you're in a good mental space, you don't undersleep. You take care of yourself. But he broke these things down and he told me, you have till you're 24, as you know, because that's when your brain fully develops as a male. Mm-hmm. But you have to put in these works. He said, but I want to break something down. You also have gifts. Bipolar is not a bad thing. He's like, you have bipolar too, which means you have manic highs, right? And those manic highs make you feel unstoppable. Learn how to control that. Depression, all you need to do is learn how to fight that. And he said something to me that has stuck with me forever. And I very rarely tell this to people that have depression because it's just something you have to learn on your own. But he said, what you don't realize is you're fighting your way into depression. You are actively choosing to fight your way into depression by every single thing you do. Listen to the way you talk. You self-loathe. You spend money and don't take care of yourself. You create these cycles and don't do anything to stop it. He's like, everything you do is literally crawling deeper and deeper and deeper and digging this hole into depression. So why continue? He's like, stop that, create better habits, and pursue what you want. Use that manic confidence. Learn to love that. And when you feel, because it won't go away. He's like, but you'll always have that ability to draw that out and exert way too much energy into something because you've done that before. And so I put in the work, and this is the crazy thing. For the 3 years, it was the most surreal life experience that I've ever experienced because it was the biggest sacrifice I've ever given myself.
3 years of isolation.
Okay. And to put it in perspective, I was living with my mom at the time too. And a backstory about my mom is, besides all the stuff I told you, she's slept with 3 of my best friends growing up, underage. My little sister was the one that actually found that out. Damn. She's taught us to steal. She taught us to do all these different things. She was never in fact, these 3 years, one of the days I told her, I was like, hey, I actually found a place in Australia that euthanizes humans. I would like to do that. Her response was, okay, we'll figure it out. That was the moment.
Can you explain euthanize to the listeners?
Yeah. So euthanizing is a nice way of saying injecting chemicals into your body. Essentially like how prisons kill somebody on death row. Like that's essentially what it is. It's you agreeing for a doctor to inject poison into you.
Wow.
Yeah. So she was okay with that. But these 3
Great
years.
role model.
Yeah, yep. Actually, you want me to be honest with you?
Yeah.
That was the best role model in my life. You
Teach
want to
you
know
what
why?
you don't want in life.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Every day I always thought, I do not want to be somebody on food stamps. I don't want to be somebody having to steal from Walmart. I don't want to be somebody that cares about money more than their kids. And so in these 3 years, though, I'll tell you, the first year was the most confusing. I woke up every day crying. It was the weirdest experience. I don't know if anybody's experienced that, but I would wake up crying. Like that, not wake up and like think about life and then get sad and cry. I would wake up crying, miserable that I woke up. It was the worst thing to me. But it was also like a catch-22 because I'm sitting there, I hate life, I'm mad I woke up, and I'm also making the decision to try to be better. Then the second year comes, and I start to like learn a lot of how to control my behaviors, control my spendings, understanding myself more. But then I start to get lonely. Like I haven't literally when people say they isolated or they take time, they'll still text somebody, they'll still talk to somebody. I didn't text a single person for that time. I had no contacts in my number besides work. The only people I talked to was at work or at home, and if it was my mom asking me if I wanted something to eat. That was it. And so I started getting super lonely and going stir crazy. And I'm like, I need to get out. I need to do things. But I forced myself to stick it through. And as that third year hit, peace. I fell in love with my own body, my own energy, and my own time. I literally fell in love with being on my own. And everything was enjoyable. But that wasn't the moment that things changed. That was just the moment that I was allowed to really put in work. And the reason why I took these 3 years was because of the relationship I was in. When things finally fell through, I created over 100 fake numbers on like a Text Now app to try to get a hold of her.
Wow.
There was one moment where I was so petty, I threw our rent money in somebody's window that like had a moon roof that was cracked or a sunroof that was cracked. I threw it in just to cause an argument. That's how out of my mental I was. And I realized I was so bothered by the fact that I had this dependency to somebody, that I created, that I not only had this dependency to somebody, but that I disrespected myself and spent so many hours creating number after number just to get a hold of her, to the point where she just disconnected her phone. And so I said, this is a problem that I need, that this is a problem internally.
Yeah.
I need to learn how to be okay with being alone. And that was what those 3 years were. It was the most surreal experience.
So what age were you in the 3 years?
That was 21 to 24. Yeah, 21 to 24.
Okay.
And that's the thing. So like you asked the other day, I'm 25.
Yeah.
So this is 2 years away.
Yeah.
Now from 21 to 24, or sorry, no, it was 20 to 23. Yeah, 20 to 23. Because 24, I spent the year honing and practicing everything that I had taught and analyzing for any other problems. For example, I got in a relationship with this girl because I thought I was now ready. I'd learned to be okay with myself. I had learned to love and respect my time. And I've learned how to really handle conflicts and problems. But then this relationship highlighted all the things I wasn't. It showed me I still had a little bit of dependency problems, or I still had worries when they wouldn't text me back. And she actually told me one day after she ended things, I was, again, begging somebody to stay. It wasn't as intense this time, but I was still begging somebody to stay. And she looked at me and she said, I'm not going to continue this relationship with you. You know why? Because you're allowing me to treat you like crap. You don't love yourself, which means you could never love me. And that messed with me mentally.
Yeah, that hurts.
Yeah, especially when you know it's true. And so that put a lot into perspective, and we stayed friends. And we helped each other through that. But from 3 to 24, that was when I learned all and highlighted it. And then 25 came, which is what I am living now. And I've been doing this for so long on this self-building and self-worth that I've hit a point where now I'm finally, for the last year, I looked back at it. Honestly, so my birthday was July 17th. And that day I looked back and I was like, wow, I never thought I'd be here. When I was depressed, I was like, oh, maybe I might be happy one day and but the depression will still always be there. When my birthday hit, I sat back and I said, and because you have to wait a year or so to really know, even after you're 24, if you're stable, because you could still relapse. Mm-hmm. When I went back to the doctor, and this was around the same time, he said, well, everything's cleared. I can permanently delete this from your record.
Nice. Congrats.
So, yes, thank you. And so it dawned on me, and I was like, I spent this whole year happy. Like, I haven't stressed even, for example, before I got up here to Harriman, I was living in Sandy. I had, my rent was $2,000. I had no job for the last 2 months and had gone through my savings and had no job, no offers, nothing. And I had to figure out the last 2 months and where I was going to go. I had no car at the time either. I wasn't even stressed through that. In my mindset was, it'll get done. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that dawned on me, and I was like, wow, this is weird. I've just been happy. And so when I turned 25, I just made a promise to myself, I'm not going to try to overdo myself this year. I'm not going to try to stress myself out about learning and building my mental more. I've hit the cap of what I can learn in my mental. Not in the sense of I'm done growing, but for this time in my life, I don't need any more knowledge. I need to just now utilize the knowledge I have. So I said, this year is just enjoyment. I like to have my life in chapters, and this chapter is being happy. And like, it's funny because it's so different when you're truly happy. Like, I was sitting in the jacuzzi, and it was cold enough for it to be steaming, and I was so mind blown by that. This is the difference between happiness and depression. Is depression says, oh, nobody loves me, even though you're having somebody right there that's taking the time to listen to you and try to help you. Happiness is, wow, steam is so cool. Like, think about it. Steam, this is a thought I genuinely had. I was like, steam is something you can see, taste, and feel, but you can't physically touch and hold it and grab it. And that to me was the most mind-blowing thing. It was something that the universe was like, hey, this is beauty. But yeah, so that's where I'm at now, is just enjoying life.
That's amazing.
That's awesome. I think that's really cool because a lot of people don't think like you can get over these things by yourself or like change your whole mental view and outlook on things. But I believe you truly can. Mm-hmm. Like you said, it's the smallest things now, that are just
100%
epic. It's so cool. So I think that's awesome.
I think that's the only thing that I'm ever really sad about nowadays, to be honest with you, is having experienced this and knowing that it's possible and knowing what you have to do to get over it. Because I genuinely believe that when it comes to happiness and depression, it is one of the very few things in life that is black and white. And I say black and white in the sense of, you break it down like this. If you don't want to be depressed and you want to live the happy life, you have to do only a very few set of things. They're hard things, but it's very few. You have to continuously push yourself to be better, continuously be kind to everyone, and continuously put effort into everything you believe in. That's it. You just have to be devoted to you. And through that, you will find happiness. The problem is most people, it's easier to choose the comfort of the state that they are in than risking trying to be better and failing. Yeah. And it blows my mind. And it hurts because I'm like, you could be happy. For example, one thing that changed mine was I heard this saying that said, watch how you talk. It affects everything about you. And he said, your soul and you, or if you don't believe in that, your subconscious and your conscious are not the same person. Your soul is not the same person that you are. They are two beings intertwined. It is your first love. It is your first person that you ever care about. So you have to think of your soul or your subconscious as a genuinely different person that happens to be fused with you. When you do this, you realize, yeah, your words really do affect you. Instead of saying, I can't go out, I'm broke, you switch that to, I'm sorry, I can't go out, I'm overcoming a financial endeavor. Instead of saying, I can't afford that, but I wish I could, you say, dang, I really want that. What do I have to do to get it? One puts your mind into a self-defeat. The other puts your mind into a challenge. And naturally, our subconscious or our mind is wired to be in survival mode. So when you give it a challenge, it figures it out. But most people choose the comfort of being miserable.
So you think depression was comfortable for you?
Oh, 100%. You want to know why?
Yeah.
Depression was so comfortable because as long as I was in it, I had a reason to be miserable. I had a reason to not pursue. And you know what the honest truth was? Before I said I committed to myself fully, I was afraid of being successful because I didn't know who I would be without depression. Depression became my character because not only did I now have a reason to be miserable, I also had a reason of why I wasn't successful. Not only that, but I also always had something to overcome. I could always make my life seem like I was doing better, because here's the trick. Oh, my life is so hard. This is the reasons why. But I'm still here, right? So I sound like I'm complaining, but I also sound like I'm trying to stay and trying to fight. But really, you're just like, you're living in this bubble of comfort. You don't have to try. People feel bad for you. And that's and it's a form of connection. And you get lost in that. And the reality of it is it is scary to leave that, because the only way you leave depression is by blaming yourself. That's the reality of it. Because it's not anybody else's fault. Like, sure, there are things that people do that might cause you trauma. There are things that people like my mother that might do that might affect you deeply. But like, for example, yes, my mother was a terrible mother. But was she the reason why I was depressed? You could ask 90% of people, they'd say, yeah, that's childhood trauma. The way I look at it, no, that wasn't her fault. That was me not being strong enough to realize she didn't care and kept fighting for somebody's approval that didn't want to give it. It was me not respecting myself and saying, oh, I'm still going to be around you. I'm still going to put up with this. And that's the reality of it. It was me not saying, you're being stupid and spending all of your money. All these things that create problems in your life is all self-brought, no matter what happens. And this is something that I heard when I still idolized Will Smith, right? He says, make everything your problem. If your dad isn't in your life, cool. That's now your responsibility to fix. And that's how you have to look at life. Even if you didn't cause it, it's your responsibility. So, for example, if I have a best friend and they betray me, well, guess what? That's not his fault. That's my responsibility. I need to choose better friends. I need to make sure I'm watching myself and who I'm surrounding with. I need to level up my knowledge so I can make sure I can spot these things, not be so naive. So make everything your problem. It's easy to
Take
find
accountability.
solutions. Yeah, and that's rare nowadays.
Yeah, looking in the mirror fucking hurts.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's where the most value comes from.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
So, let's talk a little bit about your nonprofit.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just tell us
Okay.
about it. What is it?
So
How did it start? I mean,
Yeah,
I know you.
Nonprofits are notoriously hard to start, so I'm curious about this.
Yeah, so that's the thing is people think they're notoriously hard to start. Also,
I should say I've heard they're hard to start.
let me ask you this. Do you think people that own nonprofits make money?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Before it used to be that people thought that nonprofits they were legally not allowed to take money. Well, you can't. Because you get a certain allotment and certain amount of grants. And so I want to preface it with saying this. You have to be selfish in every single thing you do. Being selfish does not make you a bad person. It just allows you to control the outcome of everything.
Have you heard of Ayn Rand?
I have not.
She has a book called The Virtue of Selfishness that we really like.
Oh, I'm going to have to read
Yeah.
that.
I'll have
Yeah.
to
I'm going to
shoot
grab
you
that from
a
I'm going
list,
to grab
yeah.
the name of that before I leave here. 'Cause
She's got some really good books. She's like an anti-communist.
Okay.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, so
Cool gal.
I genuinely believe that, and I said, okay, but here's the thing: it's a catch-22. You have to be selfish with great intent. So I sat there and I was like, okay, well, what's the easy way to get money? Because I need to level up my life so I can help do things that I want to do and help other people. So I said, okay, nonprofit. That's when I was going through the manic thing, and I said, okay, well, at the time I loved music. Before it was cool to want to be a rapper, I was doing that. I was writing. Before I was writing rap, I was writing poetry. The only thing that made me switch to rap was when I went from middle school to high school, when I was like, I probably should stop writing poetry because I'm going to get made fun of. What's something similar? Oh, rap? Cool. Okay. Let me learn how to write rap. And it made me realize if I had this outlet when I was younger, I probably wouldn't have been in so much trouble. For example, I thought, okay, if I had a program I could go to after school and learn how to do this and got opportunities to do things, that would be amazing. So I started the nonprofit, and my goal was to get music integrated back into schools. I wanted to treat it the same as a GPA, or as the same with a GPA as sports. I said, okay, sports, in order to play football, you just need a bare minimum GPA. Cool. In order to be in my program, you need a bare minimum. All I required was two things. A 2.0 GPA and a good attendance. That was the only two things. I also made it a rule with the schools. I said, the only people that I want, and there are going to be problems with this. There are going to be arguments, but the only students I'm accepting are young males. The reason why is because I sat there and I thought, this is not a war on male versus female. This is not any of that. I could care less. This is about women have so many resources. Young women in this country have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of resources. Even onto adulthood, they have thousands. But if you are a troubled young man in this society, you're automatically marked as no good. Good for nothing. You're going down the wrong path. You're either going to end up in jail, in a ditch, or in a gang. That's what you're chalked up to. If you see a young female and they're going through trouble, it's what can we do to help? Oh, you're in a bad family environment? Let me get you out of that. Oh, you need this? Here's this resource. And so I said, I experienced this firsthand. The only place that was close enough to that was a Boys and Girls Club. That's where I got my outlet. Until then, I had to wait to get court admitted into anger management and then court admitted for a family counselor. So I said, why can't we just cut that? Why can't we just stop? And so I made it a rule that I wanted to have a nonprofit that was solely for young men. And all the kids that were there, they were very talented. They were very introspective. They had very big words, and they were passionate. And my biggest thing too was it was like a manipulation tactic as well. Before I get into the topic of manipulation, I want to point something out. What I've learned about through psychology, and my biggest thing was I studied a lot of behavioral and communicative psychology. And I recommend everybody doing that because it teaches you a lot about the fundamentals of humanity and how we work. Now, what I learned through this journey was there is two sides of manipulation. There is good and bad. For example, you can manipulate a friend out of doing a bad decision by making, for example, a better example, my aunt. She manipulated me by getting me to believe books were free knowledge and that it's something that I should be doing. Or another way she manipulated me was she would say, hey, swearing isn't good. So anytime you hear it, anytime you catch me on it, you can smack my hand. Then one day I asked her why. She's like, because I want you to learn that bigger words are better. She's like, take this for example. This is the first big word I learned. Call somebody callow instead of saying they're dumb. And I'm like, why? She's like, because callow means you lack the knowledge or you're stupid. But what that does is somebody doesn't know that word and they're going to have to go, not only do you make them feel stupid because they don't know what you just said to them, but then they're going to have to go and look that up and then feel even stupider when they learn what it means. Mm-hmm. And that is a form of manipulation. It's looked at as bad when you use that term, but in the reality of it, we have to use that as a tool in life. So for example, with the nonprofit, I use that. I understood the value of being intellectually literate, not only in writing, but in vocabulary. So I grew up my aunt likes to call it thug nasty or ghetto. I still want them, but I wanted full face tattoos and neck tattoos, and I dressed very street. When I got my 45, I would be stupid with that. I'd flare it around. I'd put it in my hip and take pictures with it. I was very ghetto, and I'm very proud of that. So one of the songs I wrote, it says, sometimes I wonder would I have been better if I had rich soil up under my feet. If I grew from riches, I imagine all of my goals by now would have been more complete. If I had bands to feed all these fakes, then maybe they'd see the value in me. But F all that fake luxury. I'm glad I grew from the ghetto, grew through the cracks, and raised by the streets. Take that away and you've taken the beast out of me. Don't need a full belly, I need the hunger to feast. And what that means is...
I like that.
That's sick.
What that means is I am so glad I grew up that way and grew up with the darker side of things. But I also learned the importance of being educated, to present yourself. And I realized this when I dress in streetwear, even to this day, when I dress in streetwear, I get looked at differently. When I dress in business attire or dress more luxurious, you could say, or classy, I get treated so much more better. People are kinder. People are nicer to you. I was driving my uncle's Mercedes, right? And it runs out of gas as I'm turning onto a highway, right? I have no ID on me. And the cop stops because I'm sitting there for a while waiting for my uncle to come bring gas. He comes over and he just looks at me. He's like, what's going on? Out of my mouth, I say, I don't know. This isn't my car. He just goes, yeah. He goes, whose car is it? My uncle's. Where is he? He's coming down the street. He's bringing gas. I think it's out of gas, but I don't know. I don't even know how to work the car. He just goes, okay, cool. I'll just sit in the back and turn the lights.
And you were dressed nicely in this scenario.
I was in a suit and tie.
It's perfect.
Just clean cut hair.
It
and everything.
matters because people have learned from their experience how to deal with people based on the way they're dressed.
Oh yeah,
That's-
100%.
And it is usually pretty right.
Yeah.
You know?
But I also want to say something that's very highly underlooked. Because here's the thing. I've always heard this when I try to get people dressed nicer and stuff like that. I'm saying you can dress casual, you can dress streetwear, but have some nice clothes. Mm-hmm. And I say this because they'll always say, that's just not me. I don't care how people view me. I couldn't care less. And so I'm like, no, that's not the point. Yes, people will treat you differently, but the bigger picture is how you'll treat yourself. Mm-hmm. When I wear a suit and tie, I act different. Yeah. I use bigger words. I feel like it's my job now to open doors even more, to walk in last, to let people speak first. It changes your demeanor. It really does. I notice I put my hand in my pocket. I sit back more. I cross my legs. I just feel more sophisticated.
Feel proper.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Stick out your pinky.
and the funny thing is people, especially from the background that I come from, they like to clown on that or joke about it.
Yeah.
But I told one of my friends this because he's very much so still into the street life and enjoys that. And I said, it's okay. I'm not going to push this on you because one day you're going to get tired of continuously losing. And you're just going to figure out that it's so much more fun winning. And the reality of winning is you have to play the game. He asked me, what does that mean? I said, here's the thing. You and a lot of people in this country have this weird ideology. And I know this because this is mine. You have this weird thought process thinking, this game is rigged, this game is wrong, so I'm just not going to play. And that makes me the winner. And in reality, that just makes you soft. Because you want the rules to perfectly revolve around you. And that's why everything's wrong. No, a real winner, a real animal wins by other people's rules. They say, okay, this is your rules. Watch me do it better than you.
Yeah.
Look at people that are rich and wealthy. We all are playing the same rules. We're all playing the same government rules. The only difference is they learn these rules. They understand what money is. They understand the loopholes. They just play the game better. And that's the reality of it. You just have to play the game better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I got a question about manipulation. I don't think it's real
How so?
because every person is at freedom of choice. So any kind of manipulation that somebody could like portray or onto someone, they're still at freedom of choice to either choose. I mean, right or wrong in a way, right or wrong, right?
Yes and no. By the way, sorry, I had a comment that Jordan Peterson. Love it.
You like it? Yeah. Thank you.
Of
You have to
course.
come back when we get the sign
Yeah, we're getting. So it's gonna be a 3 foot by 3 foot
Yeah.
neon sign all
Okay.
the way up
of
here.
our logo.
It's coming
Yeah.
this week,
Oh,
and so it's gonna go right there for
I
the
love
cameras.
that. I love
It's
that.
gonna be sick.
Sorry. So,
We'll show you.
Oh, yeah,
Give
yeah.
a picture of it.
Yeah, my internet's not working at the moment, but we'll get it up.
yeah.
Either way, we'll show you
So-
after manipulation.
To answer that question, I disagree. Here's why.
Okay.
Let me ask you guys this. What is manipulation? Like the general understanding of it.
For me, it would be basically coercion.
I tend
Coercing?
to disagree as well. Coercion?
Yeah, coercion.
Yeah.
Like having someone go a certain route that you want them to go.
Yeah.
That would be manipulation to me.
Yeah. So on a simplistic term, manipulation is control. Controlling the
Yes.
outcome of another person.
Yes.
Okay. So let's take that and let's apply it to a scenario. Well, in order to control something, you have to have more knowledge than it. And I say
Yes.
that because, so for example, I have an astounding amount of knowledge when it comes to psychology. I understand body language plays a huge role. For example, you may not realize this, but I do. If I mimic your body language, you're going to naturally feel more comfortable around me. So if I sit exactly how you're sitting, you naturally all of a sudden, now go ahead and change your position. This is something you can experience at the moment.
Interesting. 'Kay.
Change your position.
Just to anything.
Say whatever you want.
All right, I'll go like you.
Okay. But anyways, you're going to notice that you're naturally going to feel more comfortable with me because I'm mimicking everything you do. I'm showing you that I am on the same page as you.
Okay.
And the crazy thing too is what you're going to do is I want you to practice this around people, and you're going to, the hardest part is you think that people will notice.
Yeah.
When you start practicing it, you realize people don't notice.
Okay.
In fact, I want to point something out. You guys have been sitting the same way, but look, you're sitting very similar to how he's sitting. You guys happen to be directly across, which means because you're looking centrally, these are the two things that you mimic right now. You guys aren't as comfortable with me, so you guys naturally mimic each other's. You'll notice this with your friends too. You'll naturally
It's
be
interesting.
So therefore, I say, if I have more knowledge than somebody, I can manipulate their outcomes. Because you're not wanting to trust me more. I'm just giving your brain every signal to. For example, if I want you to feel more passionate, watch this. If I sit there and I say, I believe in my foundation. I believe in the nonprofit I made. You guys feel something, right?
Yeah, it'd make me want to sit up straighter and be like, okay.
But
more
but
engaged.
watch this. I genuinely believe in my foundation. This means the world to me. I can't express to you how much I love this. For some reason, when we grab our hearts, it sends a signal to everybody else's brains saying that, like, this is something that means something close to me.
Okay.
We do these things always naturally. So there's these things called micro expressions that are uncontrollable. And because these, and the crazy thing is these micro expressions are universal across the world. Every tribe, every nationality, every country, they're universal. These are like the same face as disgust, the same face as excitement, the way our pupils dilate if we lie, or the way they contract if we find something attractive. And so our brains, communication, if you look at it on a psychological level, our brains or our communication is more behavioral or body language based.
Where it's like 75% body language, and the rest is verbal.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's why texting sucks.
Yeah. Right. Well, if you watch someone talk without their hands, I think you'd subtly feel something off. If you watch someone no hand movements, I think you'd feel something was weird, but you wouldn't catch it maybe.
Do you know why that is so profound in how we live and how we communicate? And this is something that I love about psychology, is it's very traceable throughout history. You can trace back why we do things. For example, why is it so important, our body language? Because throughout history, way before we were in a civilized era, you had to be careful. You had to understand how people were. If somebody approached you with their hand behind your back, you knew you had to be worried they might try to assassinate you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or if you weren't in a role like that, you had to, as a citizen, had to worry about where your hands were so that the king didn't think you were trying to assassinate him or somebody else. You had to also, this plays in a part of peasants versus royalty. No matter what side you were on, or even if you were in the middle, there were certain people that were above you that you knew, oh, don't make eye contact. Don't do these are things that we had to learn and we had to ingrain in our brains because they had serious consequences. So those stuck throughout history. Not only that, but especially nowadays, we've learned how easy it is to lie. And so we, more so now than ever, don't trust anybody's words. Words almost mean nothing. It's easy to say something, but it's much harder to do. So body language is such a big key. But I say, going back to manipulation, I think it's very real. For example, with the nonprofit, right? The reason why I said literacy is so important and being educated in the language you speak is so important is because if you don't know how to portray exactly what you believe, how do you make somebody else believe that? If you don't have the words to say what you really feel and paint a picture enough to not only be able to get simple-minded people, but to get intelligent people, because you have to do both in life. You have to convince the people that are going to support you, and you have to convince the people that can financially support you. So literacy and vocabulary and how much depth is in that is important. Because if you can't explain your dream, nobody's going to buy it.
Yeah.
How many times have you talked to somebody and they use like 20 times? Or say or they pause a lot? No, you have to be proficient in your education on linguistics. You have to. Not only that, but it sounds sexy no matter who you are when you're being sophisticated. Mm-hmm. And you can also confuse people by the words you use. All languages, all conversations are a mental battle. A mental battle of wits. Who is out, like when you're trying to convince somebody, it's who has the better ability to portray what their side is. If you're pleading a case, it's how good can you convince them that you're innocent? Or if you're talking to a friend and you're trying to help them, how good are you at analyzing a situation, analyzing and knowing who they are, and being able to iterate what the point is you want to them so that they can change their depression? But most people don't view it that way. Most people say, oh, I'm not good at dealing with people like that, or oh, I just don't know what to say. No, you just lack the words because you've never known them. It's like this whole when it comes to the trans stuff and everything, I really couldn't care less one way or the other. I think we have way bigger problems to deal with. The only thing I care about is facts. That's the only part that I get irritated with, is I'm like, I don't care if you want to be called Caesar or whatever you want, but we like, and if you want a whole separate section, that's cool. But like, we just, as a baseline of humans, have to have facts, like separate fiction from nonfiction. Like chromosome wise, we have male, female. Like, these are things and here's the thing, I'm not closed-minded about it. If a scientist came right now and said, no, I can take a human that is a male and genetically modify them to the point where they literally are a female and can give birth, at that point I'm stepping back and I'm saying, okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you can change a chromosome at any age and you can completely alter that. But we're not at that point yet. So until that happens, to where a man converts to a woman and becomes or gives birth, facts matter. And the reason why facts matter is because if you forget something so simple as there's men and women, you lose the ability to control the narrative.
Yeah, your train of thought is not even on the rails.
Because if it starts with there, how soon is it to be like 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4? And if you don't know
Have you read 1984? Thank God.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that's a good reference.
Yeah. So, but I say that to say there's that manipulation is real in so many different regards, because that is a form of manipulation. It's a way of the government slowly taking away our knowledge, because think about it, at a certain point, imagine years down the road, if it's gotten to the point where we genuinely believe gravity doesn't exist, there's no difference between male or female, this, that, and the other. They could get to a point where the U.S. could literally be like, okay, so you're literally just designed to work for us. And we would all just buy into it because we wouldn't know. Like, imagine if they took the word no away. They deleted it from every single thing. It got erased to the point where literally nobody's ever said the word no now.
Don't give them any ideas.
Right. But this is a reality that people need to realize. Like, these things can happen. It sounds far-fetched, but if 10 millennium down the road, that might be too long to you, but at a certain point, your generation could be not even knowing what no is.
Yeah, Ayn Rand has a book, similar premise, but they get rid of the word I.
Oh, yeah.
So they never think about themselves in the word I.
Yeah,
I've
really
got to
cool.
show you
So
this
weird.
gal. She's got some bangers.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so I like that answer.
Thank you.
You got me good.
where I was thinking about it is lying. It is another form. That's how you take away somebody's freedom of choice, is you lie to them.
I only have one stipulation with that.
Tell me.
I love that thought process because it points out something even of a bigger problem than manipulation. I think lying isn't manipulation. It's one of the words that actually genuinely means what it's saying. Lying. Lying is simply lying. It is lying to you and the person. Lying isn't manipulative because I believe the truth genuinely always comes out. For example.
Oh, it does.
For example, right? If we've been friends for a while and you leave your wallet over and I steal the money from it, right? Mm-hmm. You would trust me enough if I told you no, I didn't steal it. I didn't manipulate you at all. I didn't make change in the outcome of any single thing in your mind. You just trusted that I didn't take it.
Mm-hmm.
There was no manipulation. I just took advantage of you. Now, if I had said, no, I didn't take it, but I think I know who has, he might have taken it. He was around your stuff, and then when he got up, it was gone. That's manipulation.
And another lie.
But a lie is the backbone of so many different things. Mm-hmm. It's the backbone of manipulation, dishonesty, heartbreak. So lying is an entity on its own. It's, in my opinion, the most toxic entity. Like Jordan Peterson says, he says, it's not that I don't lie, it's that I'm very particular about how I lie.
He also says I've never seen anybody get away with anything ever.
Yeah. And it's the truth, because one thing people overlook about that is he's not saying that it comes out and everybody knows about it. No. you lose parts of your soul when you betray it. So I think that's why there needs to be a difference between lying and manipulating. Because lying is an animal. It is a demon on its own that deserves its respect. Because it is, in my opinion, the most heinous thing you can do. Because the only way you can lie to somebody is if they give you trust. If you don't trust somebody, it's not a lie because you know the lie exists.
Mm-hmm. You're expecting the lie.
Exactly. So in order to truly lie, you have to be given true trust. And that's why, to me, it's disgraceful. I think there are times you need to lie, sure. But I think, like Jordan Peterson, you have to be very selective of when you do and how you do it. Yeah.
So, by the way, listeners, we met Chaz. That's our guest name. We met Chaz, or at least I did, me and Grace, at Murphy's 126.
Yeah, Murphy's Cafe 126.
Yeah, Murphy's. Amazing food. Shout out. Yeah, shout out to them. But either way, when we visited there, you mentioned you started a clothing brand on one of your highs.
Yep.
Your manic highs.
Manic high, yep.
Yeah. Can you dive into that and kind of how did this happen?
So, me and my buddy Ethan, he's one of my best friends. He's like, he plays such an interesting role in my life because I have another buddy, Josh. He's like hand in hand with somebody that's like I view as an equal. Like, not say I don't view as Ethan as an equal, but he's literally matches every single thing I do. So I'm forced to view him as an equal. Ethan is literally like the younger brother I never had. He is so receptive of all the things I try to tell him. He's a couple years younger than me. I think he's 21, but he listens to what I have to say. He sees the advice, he sees what I do, and he waits for me to do it and implement it, and then he sees the results and he follows. And he's somebody that I know is going to be successful in anything he does because I've seen how far he's came. And one day we're sitting, and this is the person that I started the whole music thing with and everything too. And we've always been dedicated, and there was a time where I stopped talking to him because he wasn't as dedicated. And then when I realized he was, we reconnected. And then I had this thought, we were talking, and we were like, well, how can we help boost our music? Well, what if we create a clothing brand? Okay, what do we do with that clothing brand, and why does that benefit us? Because it's another outlet to market not only to other people. We can go to other artists and sell and create clothing designed specifically for them. All we have to do is create it, send it to them for free. Hey, if you like it, let us know. And then so we had this whole game plan, and we were like, you know what, let's do it. We also just wanted to have a business of our own that we did together. And so we had no money, we had no clue how to do it, and I got this idea, honestly. I know it's there's either you hate him or you like him. I'm in between. I think he says the right things certain times, says the wrong things other times, but overall he's trying to get a message across, he's just doing it in the wrong way. It's Andrew Tate. Yeah. Yeah. He's something. I think at the time that he was really hyped up, and I think that's what the world needed, somebody to jar everybody. But he doesn't present things in the right way. And maybe that's purposeful. But he says a lot of things that kind of make you think. And one of them was, you don't need money. I was watching this video. He says, you don't need money to start a business. And I literally verbatim took this idea and used it. He said, if I was starting a makeup company, I would go and get pictures of the makeup products I want to sell. Then I'd put those up online. Then I would use that money from the first orders to get the actual product itself. Then I would tell every single person that bought that, say, hey, so sorry we oversold. We're going to give you a free gift or a free coupon. I was like, that is such a genius idea. What's the worst that happens? Because he also says, what's the worst that happens? You just send them back their money? Okay, cool. And so I was like, what is the worst that happens? Cool, let's do it. So I did that. I called him. I said, hey, in order to know that you're serious, let's start. I need you to find the manufacturers and everything. Do the research and figure that out. So he comes back, hits me up, and we do it. We actually ended up using Alibaba to buy all these different things. And so we took the pictures from Alibaba because they already had the models. They already had the images. And we put them up and cleaned them up and made a little Squarespace. And then we marketed that. Then we did exactly what he said in that video. We took that money, we actually bought the products, and we actually gave them out. And what I decided was, I was like, we're going to give them a 50% off. Then we're going to raise the prices a bit so that it equals out, and they could become a returning customer. Then I did that cycle. Then I got to a point where I was like, okay, now I'm doing this. I was running a multiple restaurants, and I was also reconnecting with my family. So my aunt and uncle, we split off at 18, like I said. And then, but during this time too, we had reconnected. And so there's all these different things going on in my mind. And so I was like, all right, okay, let's take a pause on that. We know it works. Now let's build on other things. And so that's where the point is we're at now. So now we're focusing more on the music side of things again. And then I think the strategy is just to learn how to manage each part and then come on a full front attack.
So how many sales did you get? How did you promote this to even get the sales? And where did you store it all?
So we bought literally one of those janky storage units that are like $20-something a month. We put a lock on it, threw everything in there. But for the first time, and before we could get that, we were putting stuff in my house up in Park City. We were just storing it all. And we got about 100 and something, 200 maybe orders at first. Only 30 of them we refunded because they didn't want the coupon or anything. They were just upset. And that's something you have to expect. Because if you, and I do want to say this, if you're doing something like this, it is more of a snaky approach. It is more of a, you're finessing the game. And that's something you have to make a choice on if that's what you want to do or not. For me, it was because in my mind, I'm very black and white. Either you are a consumer or you are a business owner. And the reality of the world is as cutthroat as this is, and I think I'm this way because of the work that I put in on myself, it's a dog-eat-dog world. And if you're going to get, there's a quote that Jordan Peterson says that says, to be kind is not good enough. To be kind does not mean you're a good person. To be a good person, you have to have done and be capable of heinous things and choose not to. And so in my translation of that, you have to be careful of not going too far over, because you'll lose yourself and you will become a nasty person. But there is the reality of the world where it says, if you want to get the life you want, you kind of have to be cutthroat. You can't care about every single individual you walk in front of. You have to kind of take advantage of certain people, because as dark as this is, there are people in this world that are choosing to be taken advantage of. And then there are people in this world that are realizing that and taking that advantage. And you're one side or the other. Unless you're very rare and fortunate to where you can coast down the middle, you've already had a great family and they have amount of wealth and you get to choose that. But that's very circumstantial. Most of us, we're put in starting positions that are terrible. And so we have to figure that out. And if you don't be a hustler, you're going to get lost. But the counteract to that is to, when you get to that point of where you can give back, you do. You have to be selfish in certain regards and kind in every other way, because there has to be a balance. And that's how I think is the best way to get through life. You have to know you have to take advantage of certain people. You have to know at certain times you need to be a beast and do what a beast does. But the balance is loving and caring and using that you've gained for better. Oh.
Interesting.
Fair enough. I heard something about like you're working on acquiring restaurants.
Yes.
Is this the truth?
Yes.
I wanna hear about that as well.
So the place that I'm working at right now, Murphy's Cafe, I will be so he doesn't like to call it franchising. He likes to call it operators. So I'll be operating that store, which essentially is franchising it. Mm-hmm. The reason why he doesn't like to call it franchising is because Mr. Murphy is, hands down, so there's a quote that I heard that says, every man needs a mentor until they learn. Every man needs a mentor until they gain enough knowledge to then become the mentor. Then you must turn around and find someone. And so that means you have to have a mentor, and you have to be mentoring somebody. That is the perfect way to live life. You feel like you're gaining knowledge and you're learning and you're growing, but you also feel like you can give that back and train somebody else and help somebody else in turn. Mr. Murphy is my personal mentor. He is somebody that I think every man needs another man that they bow down to. As weird as that sounds, because being able to bow down to another person and say, no, you are higher than I am. I put myself beneath you, is a strength of itself. It is saying, I understand I don't have the knowledge you have. You can help me get to the point that I couldn't get on my own. Therefore, I am listening. I am your student. And he's an amazing person. So he came to me, and so backstory, he met me while I was going through all this trouble. I actually was working with him as he opened the first Murphy's Cafe. And I ended up stealing food from him because I was so hungry at the time, and I was too embarrassed to ask him for help. And he found out that I had stolen food, and he was like, why'd you do that, man? You could have just told me, and I would have given it to you. And so obviously we parted ways. And as of, I want to say 2.5 weeks ago, I finally, I saw him again a couple months ago, and we talked. And then I told him, I was like, yeah, man, like you actually were the one that changed my career life and made me take things seriously. And now I'm an exec chef. I've been an exec chef for the last 4 years. And then 2 weeks ago, I walk in, I say, hey, I'm looking for a job. I'm back up in the area. And I was working at this place called Grid City, and it was just a heinous experience. So I jumped ship. And I asked him, I was nervous because of our history, and we talked about that, but he gives me a second chance. Then he breaks down, he asked me how I'd feel about being an owner. And so I was like, yeah, that's my goal, is I'm tired of working. I don't even want to manage. I want to own. And he goes, okay, well, I want to do something different because it's always been my goal to help somebody else get to the place that I'm at in life. He says, instead of demanding $250,000 up front, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a deal with you. We're going to make a contract where you'll pay me with my own money, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, okay, so you're going to be running this store. This will essentially be your store once we sign that contract. You'll just be paying me $10,000 a month off of what you make, and then 5% off of the gross. Everything else is yours. That way, you're not paying this whole lump sum up front. And you're still making way more money than you'd make anywhere else. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, let me see the numbers. What are the numbers? So I look over the numbers, and I'm like, okay, so if I owned this last year, I would have made $100,000. He's like, yep. And that's paying you back. I'm like, yep. And that's the 5% off the gross. It's like, yep. And all the math checked out.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, that is, especially with our history, that is something that is so rare to find. And so he put me through the ringer, because while I was working at Grid City, I had worked already like 3.5 weeks straight. No day off, 8 a.m. to 11 at night. And I had like 2 or 3 days of a break till I convinced myself to walk into Murphy's Cafe. Then he was like, all right, you're going to work every day for the next 2 weeks. Every day for the next 2 weeks worked. That's the point where I'm at now, where it's my first day off in the last month and a half.
Well, thanks for spending it with us.
Yeah,
appreciate
it.
I'm happy to. But it was insane. It was an opportunity like I've never been offered. And I think this brings up a good point, too, about success in life. You have to stop relying on people that you can count on. In the sense of my family owns a salon. They're very successful. They've amounted a lot of wealth. And every part of me even at this moment, sometimes I still want to just jump onto their ship. You know, it's easier to jump onto their ship. But I forced myself to stay away from that because that's the easy option, and I want to create something for myself. Mm-hmm. But when you decide something like this, and this is an important thing about manipulation, is you have to understand you have to manipulate yourself. You have to trick yourself. You have to know yourself so well that you can do this, in the sense of, I know I get very frustrated when I'm low on sleep. And so I have to sit there and I have to force myself to wake up at 6 in the morning. So by the time I go in at 8 or 9, I have had enough time to be angry and get that out of my system. I will purposely I'll see my phone's halfway through and I'll purposely unplug my phone, because I know if I'm tired, I'll just try to use my phone as a distraction, or I'll keep checking my phone time. So by the time I'm working, halfway through the day, my phone dies, so that I can't check up or use it as a distraction or this, that, and the third. You have to do little things to trick your mind, to catch yourself. If you know you're, like, for example, I knew I was very self-isolated, and I knew I was getting too comfortable being alone. So I started realizing that I was losing sociability skills. So then I would force myself to get trapped into situations. So when I did have a car, instead of driving my car to go to parties or stuff, I'd go in somebody else's car, because then I knew some point I'm going to want to go home, but I won't be able to because I rode with somebody else. Mm-hmm. So I'd be stuck to figure it out.
Smart.
And these are things that you have to really be motivated to counteract and stop yourself. But yeah, so that's the point I'm at now, is where I think in the next 6 months or so, be signing that contract, and because he really wants to franchise. But the thing that I respect about Murphy is he teaches me things both inside of life and outside of life. He, like, for example, the other day, I actually read this to you guys. So the other day I messaged him and I said, so because we got in a little bit of a heated argument where I told him, I was like, I'm feeling defeated. Like, you're micromanaging this, that, and the other, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's asking me, did Murphy do it? Or did Murphy say it's okay? I'm like, why? Like, obviously we already talked about, I just need, like, for example, if I ask for fries, they're like, well, what ticket, this, that, blah, blah, blah. And like, just give me the fries, because I said we need the fries. Yeah. And so that was a problem on my behalf, because I was underslept. I wasn't controlling my behavior, and I was acting irrational. And so I said to him, I was like, hey, I feel defeated. And we talk it out. And he says, if you're already feeling defeated, then this isn't for you. One thing that I know, and this is something you have to really learn yourself. Like, this is something people highly underestimate. You have to learn yourself. And like, when I say learn it, I mean, like, when I realized I really like ice cream, coffee ice cream, I'm like, I'd take a scoop and I'm like, I close my eyes. I'm like, what is it about coffee ice cream that I like? Well, I like that it doesn't really have a coffee taste, but it does. But it's also super creamy. Usually, it's more creamy than every other coffee or every other ice cream. I'm like, you have to learn these things about you. And one thing I learned about myself is I'm stubborn. I always think I'm right the majority of the time, especially in the moment. So when I have conflicts, I have to be hyper aware of this. And I know I'm not being receptive and I'm being stubborn. So I have to take time to analyze what that conversation was. So I texted him and I said, hey, Mr. Murphy, something you said stuck with me through the day. So I spent the night meditating on it. You said, if you're already feeling defeated, this isn't for you. And it felt like there was slight disappointment. But I've learned you hide your real meanings more often than not. Upon meditating, I felt you were really saying, no, you just feel defeated, so make a choice. My end conclusion is this. If I let temperament get the best of me on such an opportunity and mentorship such as that in which you've provided and offered, then I am destined to fail when it's solely up to me. I say this to let you know 3 things. First, I've realized a lot of my frustration comes from lack of knowledge and entitlement, and there's no growth in that. Second, I'm deciding I'm requiring more of myself in that regard. And third, I genuinely appreciate you allowing me to speak on my frustrations and readily giving me advice that I see in the future, both benefiting my business and personal endeavors. So thank you. Within 2 minutes, he calls me, and I'm a little worried because I'm like, I should have sent that. I'm like, and he goes, hey, Chaz. I'm like, hey, Mr. Murphy. He goes, so I took some time to read your message. And I'm like expecting the worst at this point. But he goes, I just wanted to let you know. A lot of people don't understand what I'm trying to do. And he takes this time to really explain how he thought he read that through and pick apart what I just sent him. And he ends up telling me, he's like, I want you to know this. What you just said about how you know you're stubborn and you have to think things through. He's like, that's your best quality. You analyze a lot. And it was the fact that he took that time to sit there analyze what I had just said, and then call me and give me feedback. And this was at 9:30, 10 at night. He's an owner doing countless things that I couldn't even imagine. He was up till probably like 4 or 5 in the morning. And he was there right as they opened at 9 a.m. So I'm like, the fact that he was able to do that and humble himself enough to realize, like, this is a conversation that needs to take place made me have so much more respect for him because it's rare. Yeah.
That's awesome. Sounds like an awesome boss. So how long have you actually worked at Murphy's?
So I've only worked there actually for, when I first was with them, it was only like a couple of months, like 2 or 3 months.
Okay.
Then as of now, it's only been 2.5 weeks, if that.
Wow.
Right on.
So we caught you right at the beginning kind of deal.
Yeah.
That's cool.
This will be fun. We try to have our guests on at least once a year to see how they're doing. This will be way fun.
Oh, yeah. That'll be awesome. That'll be awesome.
I have a question.
Yeah, of course.
It's like not related, but Grid City. Do you know Dave? Did you ever work with him?
I don't think so.
Okay.
No.
Never mind.
No.
I love Grid City. I go there all the time, and he used to work there.
Oh, no. Don't get me wrong. Grid City itself is an amazing
Yeah,
place.
yeah.
But internally, oh, man.
Oh, I'm sure that it's got issues. Every restaurant does this. That's how it is.
I dare say every business has
Yeah,
its own
facts,
issues.
Yeah. No, well, it's just the place itself is amazing, but the ownership, they're going to run a beautiful place into the ground if they don't figure it out, which is sad, but I hope they do.
Yeah.
I hope they do because it's an amazing place.
They have good beer.
No, Jeremy is the main. He's the head brewmaster. Man, that man does things with beer. I hate beer, but I drank way too much while I was working there.
They had a honey cream ale at one point. Oh,
Yep.
it was so tasty.
That was my go-to drink.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's so good.
The nitro honey cream ale. That was it right there.
Yep.
That sounds tasty. Beer always hurts me, so I'm still waiting to find one that doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you run your business?
Uh,
What's different about you?
I would say, so actually I'll put this in a different perspective. So when I got hired on at Grid City, and this is almost something I've actually had multiple times be asked, what makes you different? I'll tell, and this isn't just for me as a chef, this is for me in life or any businesses. I say, I'm not good because I know how to do everything. I'm good because I understand people. That's what makes me different, is I am somebody that can connect with somebody that was born, raised, and lives the street life. I can get thug nasty. I can have my slang. I can go and I know my gangs. I can whoop de whoop. I can sue woo. I could. I got all of that, but then also I can go over and sit down with an old 85-year-old person, and I could sit there and I'd be very infatuated with their life and all the things that they talk about, and I could be very passionate about that. Or I could go and sit somebody with my age and have discussions. I can talk to almost about everybody.
Versatile.
But here's the thing. The secret to that isn't learning how to talk to people or understanding psychology. The secret to being able to talk to anybody is genuinely being fascinated by them. And you have to sometimes almost like you get a little delusional in it where you like you think too highly of certain people or this, that, or the other. But the fun of it is you really just become infatuated with other people's lives. And you end up finding joy in it. And then people love to talk about themselves. So it's easy. It's easy to get connections with people. You just have to be willing to. And that's the problem. Most people listen to talk instead of listen to listen.
Yeah.
Say that louder for the people in the back.
It's honestly true.
People love to talk about themselves.
Yep.
And they listen to talk.
Yeah.
Those are your two biggest keys on how to make relationships in life.
Yeah. I think that's genuinely what makes me as successful as I am and let me point out something. Like, success to me is not being able to have all this money or buy anything you want. My version of success is being in a terrible situation and still being happy. Or having everything around you that you want and still being humble. So for me, it's a mindset. That's what success is. Success is a mindset to me. And you have to be very cautious about who you let around that. You have to be very cautious about how you treat that. And Yeah, it's something that people don't take seriously enough.
Yeah. What made you come up to me and my wife at the restaurant?
Honestly, it was just, if I've learned there are certain people that don't like to talk and there are certain people that do like to talk. And as soon as I saw you, it was like, you had a very familiar face, like I've seen you before. But I'll also
generic white boy.
But when I started talking to you, you were very engaged. And that's what I love. I love engagement. I love human interaction. And I love, like, I normally don't sit down with guests that come in. Yeah. But we were so engaged, I was like, I want to sit down. I want to take this time. And as me being a future owner of this place, it was more of a sense of, I wanted to show you as well. Yes, we're busy and everything like that, but I've put myself in a position to where I can sit down and give you that full 100% attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, the customer service is what really sold it. Like, the food was delicious, but I was telling Grace after, I was like, I haven't been to a place that has customer service like that for I don't know how long. Yeah. That goes to show.
Thank you. Of course. Honestly, I think, and here's the thing, people call it customer service. To me, it's just being human.
Yeah, connecting.
There was no part of that to me that felt like customer service. To me, that felt like, this is a person that seems interesting, and I would like to get to know them. I would like to talk to them.
That's how Starbucks was. So fun.
Yeah.
Because you're meeting people all the time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the problem. Like, one thing that confused me for the longest time is we entered an era where everybody wanted to be, V-Lone, or I'm rolling Dolo, or I don't need anybody. And I'm like, we all feel so alone, yet we all want to be a lone wolf. How does that make sense? It just baffled me.
It doesn't. The value of the world is created in human connection. Without humans, there's no value.
Yeah.
Because value comes from utility and use for the human race.
Yeah.
As far as value is we're concerned, right? There is inherent value in life, but value for humanity comes from humanity.
Yep. Oh, 100%.
So,
I think that's something that's forgotten nowadays. People don't understand we were designed to connect. We were designed. I think it was Jordan Peterson that said this. I could be wrong. But maybe it's just because I idolize them. And I'm like, anything that sounds cool, he said it. No, but somebody said that if we were really evil, we could do way more destruction than we are. In fact, we're putting out more good than, like, billions of people on this earth. We could destroy each other. All the nuclear weapons and all the war and all the guns that we have, we could be destroying people, yet there is so much more peace and kindness. So we're obviously designed for connection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so interesting
and
to see.
I want to bring it back to earlier in the podcast.
Yeah.
You were talking about how your therapist or psychiatrist trusted you to step into that role as a trusted individual. And I've said this on the podcast a lot of times, but I believe that people will grow into the positions that you trust them with.
Oh, 100%.
They will definitely step up to that plate.
100%.
Yeah, and it's been, and I've done that a lot of times in my life, and it's just crazy.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, this person is not getting it. They struggle so hard. They're not doing this. I'm like, okay, let's hold them to a standard.
Yeah.
I trust them with it,
I always say, and this is every crew that I end up taking on, or any employees that I either hire or end up taking on, is I say the one thing that's different about how I run things is we take team accountability. I was like, if you come to, and I told this, like, I had this conversation with one of the workers at Grid City. I said, he came up, he's like, hey, this so-and-so's station is continuously dirty. Can you talk to them about it? I looked at him, I was like, now I'm more mad at you. And he's like, what, why? I was like, because I already talked to you about this team accountability. I'm mad that you, instead of either cleaning it up yourself or pulling him aside and saying, hey, can you please clean your mess up? You came to me and you now want me to resolve this. I'm like, hold each other accountable. Because when you hold each other accountable, you know, okay, we are a team. We are doing this together. And now I know if this goes wrong, it was your fault. So now everybody's not only hyper aware of how good of a job they're doing. Now there is no room for anybody to slip and get away with something. And that's what I try to tell people, or try to drill into their heads, is I'm like, look, if you aren't holding people accountable, if you're not holding each other accountable, then that means this person's going to get away with something and somebody else is just going to take it over. Like, no. Everybody needs to be accountable for their part. That's just how life works. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's next in your life? What's the next big, I don't know, let's go 5 years.
5 years?
5 years.
Yeah.
5 years. That's a great question. In 5 years, I would like to be sitting around a group of people that are like-minded. I want to be winning in every aspect. I want to have life in my control, 100%. And that doesn't mean being able to go to Dubai every single day if I wanted to. Now, that means if I want to hang out with close friends, I have that. If I want to go on a crazy trip, I have people that I can go and enjoy that crazy trip with. Because I've learned, as I've amounted more success than I ever have in my life, I'm realizing I'm hitting a lonely point where, unless my family, this week has actually highlighted that, because usually I go out with my family and usually they're the ones paying, right? And I get to kind of sit back and enjoy and be around people that also can do that, but they're on vacation trying to find a place in Hawaii for another salon. And so every time I've hit up somebody to go out somewhere, they go and search up the place and like, no, that's too expensive. And I'm like, I can't do things because it's also, I don't want to be offering to pay for everybody. I do, but I also, there's something different when somebody can do that on themselves.
Yep.
Because it's not that I have a problem paying for somebody. It's that I know I'm just uncomfortable because that whole time that they're like watching what they buy.
Yeah.
Depends
who it is. I tell you what, if someone offers to pay for me, this is just me.
Yeah.
Then like, okay, if I were to offer to pay for you, I would expect you to just act as if you're paying for yourself, right? And so I'm like, I'll do the same shit.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting what I want.
But that's the thing, is you never like.
Depends on the person.
Yeah, it depends on the person. So you're sitting there, and at least for me, I'm always thinking, I'm like, I don't know. Like, all I know is there's a discomfort around this. Mm-hmm. There's just, no matter what it's just, there's a discomfort. And I'm like, it made me realize, I'm like, this is what it means when people say it's lonely at the top. Mm-hmm. Like, it sounds like a cliche, but it's literally. And a lot of people are going to hear this and go, hard problems. That's so tough. But it really is lonely because you sit there and you think you can't ask this person to go on a trip with you, or you don't have people that are as ambitious as you. And you sit back and sometimes, at least for me, I wonder, I'm like, is this worth it? Is it worth being this ambitious if I'm losing all of my friends? Am I going to get to a place that I want and be alone?
You won't be alone.
There's always circles. You just got to find them.
Exactly. But it's hard when you have people that you genuinely believed in and it gets to a point where you have to let them go. Mm-hmm. It's really hard. And I think that's why it's also so important to really know that you are okay on your own. You have to. Because there is so many times in your life of growth when you really decide to grow and start pursuing that, where you're going to have to make hard choice after hard choice after hard choice. And the blessing and the curse of it is you become numb to it at a certain point. At a certain point, you sit back and you're like, nope, you've made too many bad decisions out of my life. Mm-hmm. Luckily, I got to experience that and gain that very fast because I had to cut off my mom. I had to cut off my sisters. And there's times where it makes me sad, but I'm like, now I'm at a point where the girl that I dated, that I told you we stayed friends with, I recently just cut her off. Now I have this rule where I allow myself about 30 minutes to an hour to be really depressed and stressed about it. When that 30 minutes to an hour, and I set a timer, when that 30 minutes to an hour is up, there's no more thinking about it. When I have a sad thought, because sad thoughts will pop in your head, as soon as I realize it, I analyze every reason why I did it. And then it's gone. I don't allow myself to be sad. Andrew Tate said this, and this is one of the things that I think he really did say right, but I'll say it not verbatim in my own words. He says, this is the way I've interpreted it. I treat a good day like a bad day and a bad day like a good day because no matter the day I show up. Mm-hmm. To me, that means it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. It doesn't matter how you're feeling, because at the end of the day, you have to keep showing up, keep showing up, keep showing up.
You should watch.
I agree.
He's got Andrew Tate does an interview with a psychologist, or it's a therapist. It's pretty
It's
freaking
interesting.
Yeah.
You watch that?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny at some points. He's just like,
I'm gonna have to watch
I'm
that.
the toughest motherfucker. And he's like, "Yeah, are you really?" And he's like,
I want
"Yep."
Trump to get in with psychologists like that.
Oh my, that would be amazing.
They're
funny.
similar in that way where they say things that may have some truth to them, but the way they say it, my God,
Yeah.
they could do it better, right?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing.
It's hilarious.
When you're taking advice or pieces from people, you have to, and I think this is just the trend of the topic tonight, is like you have to know yourself, is you have to trust yourself so much that you understand you can take the good out of the bad and you can take the bad out of the good. Because at the end of the day, you're the one that chooses what knowledge you take and don't take. Mm-hmm. So when people hear me talk about Andrew Tate, they think I'm a misogynist or think that I absolutely love the guy. No, I'm just competent enough to hear what he's trying to say and reiterate it in a way that I deem appropriate.
It's like they say Hitler was a genius, doesn't mean he was good.
Yeah.
Necessarily, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all
Great
based
man.
off our perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
At the
shocked.
end of the day.
No, I shocked somebody the other day about that. They were like, "So you think, like, even like Hitler had some good?" And I literally,
hell yeah.
I looked at it, and I was like, "Yeah, as messed up as it is, and don't get me wrong, I think we could have eventually got to doing this a different way that was a lot more peaceful. But if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't know anything about psychology. Do you know that?" I'm like, the experiments that happened in those camps taught us almost the majority of psychology that we know today.
Even the medical field.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
There's
I'm
a
like,
reason.
Granted, a lot of it was wasteful, but
Yeah.
yes, we did learn a lot.
Right, but there's
Was
a
it in
reason
the right
we
way?
hired their scientists or whatever
Yeah.
to
And
the American government.
Exactly. And the thing is it's not a right way. That we could have found a better way to do it, and we would have probably found a way to do it. But that's the problem. Is I hate the we could have or we this that those arguments. It's what's the reality?
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I like it. You're actually a man of facts.
Yeah. And that's the thing is
Facts don't care about your feelings.
That is
Not fake facts.
I will say one of the here's just advice to anybody that wants to be the best friend in every group. Learn to be unbiased. I could call up any one of my friends and I know the biggest thing that they have to say is I'm unbiased. I don't care what you're going through, what you've gone through. All I care about is like I tell all my friends, they know if they call me stressed out, the first thing that they have to say to me is I need a vent or I need advice. Because I have this fundamental rule, I need to know up front. Don't just call me and start freaking out and trauma dumping. No, tell me, are you here for advice or to vent? Because if you come to vent, cool, I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna support you in how you're feeling, and I'm gonna validate that. If you're coming to me for a support or to vent and you don't tell me, I'm just gonna hear problems and you're gonna hear solutions.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's the real, and that's something that I had to learn for myself too. I in so many relationships tried forcing people to level up, and kept getting mad at people because they wouldn't listen. Then I realized certain people just don't deserve your advice. You just have to wait till they want it.
Yep.
So we have this question. We've actually had this conversation with multiple guests.
Okay.
What's the meaning of life? Number one. And number
For
two.
you.
Yeah. For you. And number two is what's the difference between right and wrong, if any?
Okay, so sorry, I have to pull this video up because
Perfect.
I actually have the exact meaning of life that I live by now. Let's see. It's this channel that I found, and as soon as I saw it, I was obsessed with it, and this is actually my motto for the next year.
Perfect.
Let's see, where is it?
I use the restroom.
All right. And the way that they put this out, it was perfect. So, let's see.
Do more than belong, participate. Do more than care, help. Do more than believe, practice. Do more than be fair, be kind. Do more than forgive, forget. Do more than dream, work.
That and this one right here where he says, let's see, I think it's this one.
Told by a great man, the The journey of life is to explore. The mission of life is to evolve. The rhythm of life is to adapt. The test of life is to persevere. The core of life is to empathize. The calling of life is to contribute. The mystery of life is to risk. The joy of life is to connect. And the grace of life is to love.
So, when you ask, what is the meaning of life? I think that is a question that not only is irrelevant, but wrong. And I say wrong because you can't just ask what the meaning of life is. The way he broke it down, you have to, there is no one meaning of life. There are levels of life. There's what is, like he said, what is the journey, or what is the goal of life? To have a journey. There's so many subsections of it where, in my belief, if you ask me generalized, the meaning of life, if I had to answer it in that blanketed end statement, would be the meaning of life is to realize there is no meaning, to stop asking that question. Because let's break it down. What does it do for you if you actually got an exact meaning of life? Then you no longer have a life to live, because it's just this purpose.
There's no infinity after the summit.
Yeah. What is the meaning of life is the most irrelevant question to me. I don't care what the meaning of life is. It's not my responsibility, nor my right to know what the meaning of life is. I don't deserve that. I am here to enjoy that. It's like looking a gifted horse in the face. Why would you do that? Why would you question, what's the meaning of life? Why am I here? What is my purpose? That's like if I gave you $1 million and all you did was ask questions about it. Why did you give me $1 million? What did I do to get this $1 million? Instead of just enjoying it. Like people ask what the meaning of death, or what happens after death. Who cares what happens after death? You're alive now, enjoy it. People get so wrapped up in all these questions because it's like esoteric for some reason, or it's like so profound to ask these questions. And it's like almost like a race to find who has the best answers. When in reality there's no answer. It's a stupid question to ask. Let it, like, not saying that was dumb to ask, but it's like, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that, because life is, as who said it? There's this rapper that's, I forget his name, but he goes, life is just life. And then I felt like life is life.
So it sounds like we're just here to create.
Yeah.
It's kind of what
was
you're
the
getting
second part of that question? You said, what's the meaning of life?
Yeah, and what's the difference between right and wrong?
Oh.
If there is one, he said.
If any.
So, with right or wrong, I think it is, there's no direct answer, but we all know what it is. In the sense of, if you took somebody out of civilization and you put them back in, psychologically, if you stab somebody in front of them, that would have psychological ramifications on them. They would know that that's not normal, because they just saw another person die that looked like them. They wouldn't know that they existed until that point, but they'd still be shocked by it. We know innately. Look at psychopaths. All of them, almost all of them, actually talk about it, say that they know what they did was wrong, but that they enjoyed it. Some of them say that they're glad they were caught because they know they wouldn't have stopped.
They just don't have the emotion associated with it like a normal person would.
And so even people that have the lack of emotions can understand that what they're doing is wrong. So that means right and wrong does not have any emotion base. Right and wrong is just complete logic. So if you want to ask, the reason why I say there's no direct answers is because there's so many right or wrongs, but if you want to know individually at that moment if what you're doing is right or wrong, just be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself and say, is what I'm about to do right? Or do I feel some guilt in doing it? You can do that to other people. What this person did was right, or was it wrong? And you have to be very honest and true to yourself. You can't dilute the picture. You can't say, oh, well, they weren't understanding my circumstance. No, you have to say, okay, but from their circumstance, was what they did right or wrong? By their knowledge. And Alan Watts has a saying that says, you would never be mad at a deer for running in front of, if you're a logical person, you would never be mad at a deer for running in front of your car and denting the front of your vehicle. If you did, you'd be stupid because you put a road in that deer's home, and that deer was doing as best as it knew how to do. The same way you think about that, you should think about people. When somebody does you wrong, you should never be mad at them. They just did the best that they knew how to do. So, for example, it might be not in your character to betray somebody. But if somebody else betrays you, as sad as it is, that's the best they knew how to do. So there is no right or wrong, really, in the sense of black and white. But at the same time, there is. It's something that is a ever-changing thing that you have to logically look at and analyze and say, on a blanket statement with the facts, what's the right thing to do?
Right or wrong to whom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, any advice that you would give to the listeners?
I have one more question,
Yeah.
too. Do you
Yeah.
have a few top books that you might recommend?
The Alchemist, has anybody read that?
Yeah, baby.
We've all read it.
The
I read it
Alchemist.
every couple months.
I love that book. I would say another good one, if you haven't read it, is Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah. Amazing.
Amazing.
He's got one called Fake. Every time I read it, I want to buy silver and gold. I'm like, man.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
good.
Journey to Excellence.
I have not read that one.
It's a new one.
That one is that one I'm actually reading right now. That one is Mr. Murphy actually put me on to, and this book has already. He asked me, he's like, "How far are you in that?" I'm like barely in the beginning, and he's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Cause this book is making me think. Like, I literally have to stop so many times and analyze. I've had to spend the last 2 days analyzing a part of that book.
Yeah.
Is
it on Audible by chance?
It might be. Honestly, I just looked it up through YouTube audio.
That's perfect.
Yeah, but advice.
Yeah, parting words of advice.
I would say, if you're truly tired of being miserable, or even if you just want to hit that next level of life, if you really want to win in life, it is possible. How you do that is being continuously advantageous in every single thing you do. You cannot do what you think is right. You have to do the best that you can. And here's the thing that I now have as my own motto is I say, perfection is real. It's just better than the best. And in order to be the best, you have to just work a little harder than the average person. The blessing in that is the average person barely wants to work. So if you look at it from that point, perfection is not hard to reach. All you have to do is genuinely be invested, obsessed with it, literally become obsessed with it to the point where you think you're crazy. One of my favorite quotes is, dreams only sound, or big dreams sound scary to small minds. And I love when people say, oh, that sounds ridiculous, because that means I'm on the right path. Just be hungry. Continuously be hungry. Be humble and understand people might have, whether they're younger or older, less or more accomplished, they might have something to say that you might need. So always be listening and always be a learner. Always be ambitious and never stop. If you need, what I did to keep motivation is every time I messed up or every time I felt deep pain, I sat there and I festered on it. I literally let it build up to me to where it became a callus or like a scar in my mind, so that the next time it happened, I was so turned off by it that I never even had to experience it again. Fester on your failures, but no, that's not the end. So those would be my parting words.
Awesome. And do you have any social media or anything you want to shout out?
I actually did create an Instagram finally.
Did you?
Finally.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Let's see. What is the name of it? It is Chaz_Swade 186.
How do you spell Swade?
SWADE.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We'll shoot you a follow tonight.
What about your nonprofit? What's the name of that? And
AOA Movement. It is on Facebook, but that one is like a back burner now. That just like, yeah, that just exists. If I do anything further in the future, I would like to, but right now my main focus is enjoying life. To be honest with you guys, just enjoying life.
Clothing and music?
Clothing and music. So music, I'm going to be better about posting it on Instagram and social media, but I will be dropping some new music as of late. I've been working on it.
Awesome.
So that will be coming. And the clothing brand, I hope, will be back active within the next 6 months to a year.
Sick.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, well, thank you, Chaz. We appreciate it. And shout out Murphy Cafe 126.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
thank you for...
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Of course, of course.
See you guys next week.
Bye.
See you.